Hi there, my name is Memo. This is my channel, Houseplantygoodness, and essentially it's a place where I like to geek out about my big passion. You might be able to see some of it behind me. It's tropical houseplants. So today is going to be another continuation of the plant review series, and I've got something that maybe not a lot of you have seen or even were aware of, and it's a philodendron, and it is the Philodendron Tenue or tenue or something like that, basically. Not entirely sure how to pronounce it. Obviously, you know why I'm looking up, it's fine. But yeah, ignore the fact that we've got shiny, shiny leaves at the moment. It doesn't normally have shiny leaves. It's just, I thought, as it's being filmed, I looked at it and I'm just like, oh, you need a bit of a wipe down. So it has just been wiped down. That's why it is extra shiny. But let me put this down and let's talk over some of the ground rules first. So if you're coming back, welcome back. You know, down at the progress bar, you can skip to your favorite bit if you want to do that. If you are new, welcome to the slight insanity that is this plant review series. So the ground rules are mainly going to be for the newbies here. It is that I will not be able to make this unbiased. It's my personal review of my personal plant in my specific conditions, which is growing in the UK in a conservatory and whatever that might mean in terms of humidity, heat, cold in the winter. Energy crisis is doing me dirty this year. But yeah, so please bear that in mind. And I will always talk about my experiences. However, if you've also got this plant and you want to share your experiences, please do so in the comments down below. What I'm hoping to make of this plant review series is essentially a repository of information that people, when they're looking for a new plant to buy, especially ones that are slightly on the pricier side, have got somewhere that they can go and check how other people's experiences have been, rather than just looking at people doing kind of unboxings or having a plant in their care for a couple of weeks. Usually most of my plants I will have in my collection for 2 or 3 or 1 year or whatever. I think this might be a 2-year plant. I'll put it up at the top. But it is something that is kind of needed, basically. It's needed to kind of say, okay, this is what the plant will look like after this period of time. No shade on the creators that are doing it shortly after they've got it. That might be the only kind of content that they've got. I've been fortunate enough to have my collection for a while, so I can at least kind of give a bit of that insight. But yes, if you're going to share your experiences with the plant, obviously down below in the comments, kind of let us know what kind of light levels it's getting, how often you're watering it, fertilizing it, all these things, anything that you think is pertinent for somebody to know about this specific plant. But I have prattled on for far too long. Let's move into the first topic. So the background on this plant, and I will kind of, as always, try to see if I can insert clips because it's difficult to film as it is very, very long. I will bring it in a bit closer and you might be able to see as well. These are some of the newer leaves. Ignore the slight amount of bleaching that's happening. This is getting very high to the top of my conservatory, so it's getting a lot more bright light than it would normally like. There's some of the older leaves there. You can see some of the ruffling, and there is the newest leaf there, and there is a new one about to unfurl. Ooh, I've only just noticed there's a slight blush. Never noticed that. This is this is one of my feral plants. But yeah, so the interesting thing, and I don't know why it's got such a big gap there. I might kind of keep it there so you can at least see some more of the foliage. There is more foliage at the bottom as well. I just don't know what is happening with that middle section. Right, in terms of when I first got this plant, I'll put a picture here from my plant review app and you should be able to see what it looked like. If I'm not mistaken, it was maybe 1 or 2 leaves. It was just barely rooted and I got it from eBay, I think. So it wasn't a plant that necessarily I was after. I'm trying to think now, because, and if somebody does know the correct way of pronouncing the name of this plant, so is it Tenue or is it Tenue? And I think on the Equigenera website, I think there is a kind of more common name, and I'll put it at the top. It was Jesus something. But I'll put it at the top. It might even be at the title, basically. But yeah, this wasn't a plant As I said, I think that the Tenue or Tenue was a plant that I've seen had been crossed with something else. I think I've got that in my head, that it was something affinity Tenue or something Tenue A that wasn't the original plant. I think this was mixed with something else to make another philodendron that a lot of people are aware of. I think. I might be talking rubbish. I will correct myself if I'm talking rubbish. But yeah, so it wasn't one that I was necessarily looking for. I think this was one of those things that I just kind of went on eBay. I was looking for another plant. This came up and it might have been from a seller that was selling another plant that I wanted. And I was just like, ooh, I can add that in because I don't think it was particularly expensive. So yeah, and I'm actually thinking about it now. It might not have been the Tenue. I think it's another plant that I'm looking at there, which is also a philodendron. And I cannot remember the name of it right now, but it will come to me and I will hopefully add it at the top. And I think that's the one, not this one. But this one is interesting because it's only recently, I've got a plant in my collection for how many years, I never thought to look at what a mature form of this plant would look like. If I can find an image that is shareable, I will add it here so you can see what the mature form looks like. And it's really cool because I hadn't realized, because it's always stayed quite compact. It's got that kind of ruffling on the leaves that you can see there. And the mature form is very similar to the kind of Esmeraldens. I don't think it gets quite as long or has the potential to be as long as the Esmeraldens, but it does have that ruffling. It's really interesting. And I think the sinuses at the top, so that kind of split point there, kind of almost fuses a bit and it goes a bit bunny-eared. It's a really weird shape. Hopefully, I have found it online. If the realities of sharing content online. If I can't find images that are shareable, I will encourage you to just do a quick Google search for the name of this plant and kind of look for mature forms. So Philodendron Tenue, mature, or something like that, or large, and you should be able to find some images of what this looks like in its big form, which is really, really quite cool. Unexpectedly so, actually. But yeah, as I said, really unremarkable in terms of how this came into my care. It was an eBay purchase. It was a bit of an impulse purchase, I'm not going to lie. But interestingly, this plant has surprised me. But let's move on to the next section and we'll dive into a bit more as to how it surprised me. So speed of growth with this one, it's interesting because I will find, and again, for the eagle-eyed amongst you, it's in the kind of lechuza pond, or actually with a lot of my plants now, I've moved them into the semi-hydro mix from Soil Ninja, the coarse semi-hydro mix. But the people asking, it's been 3 weeks since my first order, I think, and I am now on the third purchase of the coarse semi-hydro mix. The first one was a small package, didn't last longer than a day basically, and I've already got through 2 30-litre bags. Yeah. No impulse control of that. Do you know what? I'm considering it a Christmas gift to myself. But yeah, so with this one, the speed of growth was interesting because when I first got this plant, and it was only 1 or 2 leaves, and it didn't have a very strong root system, and to be fair, I don't think it still has a great root system. It took a while to kind of get going. It was very slow in the beginning. So again, if I benchmark it against the golden pothos, I would say that this plant, if the golden pothos will bring out 2 or 3 leaves in the middle of the summer, or kind of the growing period, this might bring out 1 or 2. It does get going after a while. I'm also not going to lie in this video and say that this is getting prime real estate, feral plant. Which again says a lot, because the fact that it's done as well as it has in the period of time that it has, and you can see, actually, I think I know what the spacing was. This was getting a bit more shade, and I kind of moved it and it's getting a lot more light. And can you see the difference in terms of how bushy the plant is from here to up here? It's also now getting closer to the light, so it's kind of moved above other plants that were shading it. So that is an interesting thing to always try to remember a bit sometimes. And you're just like, oh, why is this plant not doing as well? And it's kind of under other plants. Move it closer to the light or wait until it passes the other plants and see then, because actually having said that, even now in the winter, this is bringing out more leaves. So say about 2 leaves a month, basically. So that is quite good. And it is relatively fast when it gets going, but as I said, in my experience, and it might just have been the shadier location that I had it in, it took a while to get going. And to be fair, it's a shame I don't think I took any pictures, and I'm trying to see, you might be able to see the roots if I bring it in kind of closer. They're not very substantial. But this was in smaller pond, in the kind of regular lechuza pond, and I moved it into this because I wanted to see the roots. I have started now, it's probably going to be a while before we start seeing it in this series, but I've started updating my plant care app with a secondary or third image when I repot plants, just so I've got images of what the root systems look like as well, because again, I don't think a lot of people show enough pictures of root systems of plants, and I think hopefully if there's other people that are like me, I'd kind of want to know, because if you've been at this for long enough, the root system of a specific plant, which again is very rarely shown, can tell you a lot about what it might need for its care. So for instance, with a lot of the monsteras, if they've got really chunky roots, they can kind of take a bit more of a drought tolerance. If they've got really kind of fine roots, that will also give you a bit of an indication of kind of the watering needs or the kind of aeration that the plant might need, all of these things. So yeah, I've started doing that. It's probably going to be a while before I start sharing it, but it will be coming soon. Also, on a little side note, I've gone on too many tangents already on this, but I thought I'm just going to roll with it. Tell me, if you're one of the regulars, tell me if you want me to start doing some updates, because it's been nearly a year since I started posting some of the original plants that I put onto the plant review series. So it's been a year later now. Do you want me to do some updates on some of these plants as well? And I can pick a few, or if you want me to do on all of them, we can kind of go back through the cycle basically for a lot of them and see where they are now a year later. Anyway, but yeah, I think in terms of speed of growth, coming back to the original topic, sorry. Oh, tangents. Relatively fast grower-ish when it gets going. It's a bit slow to get started, or at least it has been in my experience. Right, and moving into ease of propagation, I would say this is a relatively easy one to propagate. I think I've only ever taken one cutting from this plant, and it was propagated, I'm trying to think now, in damp sphagnum moss. It did fine. In a propagation box, it did fine. It wasn't a particularly difficult one to root out. I will say it was a bit slow to root out. And did it go for a smaller leaf? Yes, it kind of went back to relatively juvenile leaves. And I'm trying to think, I don't really think I ever had a very juvenile leaf. I think that's probably one of the smallest leaves, but you can see the one previous to that, and that one is dying off, but this leaf has probably been there since I first got this plant, I think. Or it might have been one of the first plants I've had in my care. So it has served its time. It's probably in a bit of shock because obviously I changed its media in the middle of the winter. And yes, I do that a lot. I know there's a lot of people that are cringing, but I do that knowing the risks, and I've also done that most winters, and it's okay. Mainly because I don't have any time in the summer when I have to water an allotment, a garden, and all the house plants very frequently to be doing a lot of repotting. I would love to, but that would mean I would have absolutely no life between that and work. So winter is when they get my time because I don't have to deal with a whole bunch of other stuff. But yeah, propagation was relatively straightforward with this one. A bit slow to get going, but eventually when it did, it was fine and it established itself quite nicely. And I will actually echo what I was saying originally in the speed of growth. It's a while before it starts really doing very much. But yeah, it's a solid one to propagate. Coming into availability for this one, and it's an interesting one because I've seen it here and there. It's not one that comes up very often. I think it might be because probably there's not that many people that are interested in it. I would say actually that that's a bit of a shame with this one, because I didn't know about it. And yes, there's probably other plants that are similar to this, and they're probably ones that excite people a bit more. They probably get bigger leaves. I mean, some of the mature forms of this I've seen do get quite large, but my 2 cents on this is these kind of roughly kind of longer style leaves, like the Esmeraldens, like the Patriciae, like the Heterocraspidon, they can be in a bit of demand. I think they definitely are having their heyday at the moment of filming this. But those can be, not all of them, but they can be a bit challenging when you first get going, and to get the ruffles. And obviously it's very similar to the Veitchii as well. And I know some of these ruffles are not quite as pronounced as they could be, but that's probably because feral plant. I don't know, let it go there and it does its own thing. But I do think that more people should be interested in this, because I do have a lot of those roughly type leaves. Yes, after Tanya's video, and Tanya, if you're watching this, you know what I'm about to say, I will be on the lookout for the Patriciae. Oh dear, what have I done to myself? But this one is, yeah, it's one that I think more people should be aware of, and at least give a try before you start going on some of those much more expensive, kind of roughly long kind of plants. Try this one, because actually this one I found that has the potential to turn into something like that. And I say potential because obviously it's not happening in my care. It might be because of how I'm growing it, and I'll touch on that in accessories. It's a relatively easy one in that kind of look and form to grow. So yeah. Right, coming back to the availability and the pricing of everything, I would say, if I remember correctly, this was mid double digits, mid towards low double digits. It wasn't low double digits, but it wasn't a particularly expensive plant, I don't think. I will double check and put it at the top there. But again, as I said, I'm getting better at like updating my plant care app now that I know that I'm doing this review series on getting a bit more information. So when I get new things, it's like, who did I get it from? When did I get it from? At the date I usually have on there anyway. Who did I get it from? How much was it? All of these things. So future reviews will be even more in depth, basically. But yeah, it's a shame. I don't think the price has fluctuated too much in terms of at least where I am in the UK at the moment. And I think it literally is just purely because people aren't as aware of this as they might be of other similar type plants. As I mentioned, a lot of the long boys that are kind of ruffled. And it's a shame. It's a shame. It should. And I think if more people were aware of this, potentially this could be one that we could see become a bit more of a common houseplant. People that have been here for a while will know that sometimes with some of these plants, because I don't ever look at them until I pick them up and film them properly, I'm just like, oh, that might need a bit of an extra like plant tie at the top. That needs to happen after this video. But yeah, so availability, relatively available if you search for it hard enough. Pricing wise, it's not going to necessarily break the bank. If you want to try something different that's not the most en vogue plant that everybody's talking about, maybe even if it's just a bit of a trial run before you go to those plants, this might be a good one to try. I will warn, you might fall in love with it. You might end up liking it a lot more than you thought, basically. So bear that in mind. It's a bit of a warning. So coming into pests with this one, and I'll kind of talk about the obvious really quickly. I'm trying to see now if I can find it on some of these leaves to show you. It might have got washed away when I was giving it a bit of a clean earlier on. Maybe you might be able to see it on that leaf. I don't know how much that's going to show up. Probably not. This was one of the plants that, even though it's in front of my fans, had kind of mildew growing on it. And to be fair, I didn't realize for months, and I kind of left it there. Did it damage the plant? Yes, there's maybe a bit of aesthetic damage to the plant. Did it slow the growth down? No. Did it keep going anyway? Yes. So relatively hardy. In terms of pests, I will say with this one, the one thing that I have experienced is spider mites. So spider mites do like to kind of go into some of these grooves and nooks and crannies on this plant, as they would normally do with most of these types of plants. So there's something to bear in mind there. Have I had thrips on this? I think once, but again, it didn't go crazy. Have I had mealybugs on this? I'm trying to see if there is one at the moment. Yes, but maybe one or two. But again, it's probably because I can deal with this a bit more. But I think that's it. So I've mentioned quite a few pests there. Nothing that got crazy with this one, I will say. So I wouldn't go as far as say kind of pest resistant, but they don't tend to like it that much. The one I would say probably likes it more than anything else would be the spider mites. So just something to kind of keep in mind if you own this plant or if you're thinking about getting this plant, keep an eye out for spider mites because they might be your biggest woe. And coming into accessories with this one, eagle-eyed, janky support sticks, and semi-hydro. And I'm pretty sure, I think this has always been in semi-hydro. I need to double think. It might have been in soil in the very, very beginning of its life. Ironically enough, this is one that when I moved it into semi-hydro, it did a lot better. So something to bear in mind. Janky support sticks are good and they're giving it something to grow up. It doesn't have the bigger internodal spaces that you're seeing kind of here at the bottom is mainly what I was saying. It's because of that time where it was getting shaded by everything else, I think more than anything else. With this, when it gets to the more kind of light available area, you can see the internodal spaces aren't that bad. It does have a nice form for me, which is kind of very upright because the leaves will kind of fill in the space, and because they hang down, it does create a bit of a cascade. Obviously, there's bits that are missing from here. Very similar to the Esmeraldens. It's interesting because the Esmeraldens, now that the leaves are getting absolutely huge, it's kind of opened itself up more. And it's interesting because, and it might just be me imagining this, it does move a bit in the winter and in the summer. So it opens up like that a bit more in the winter because it's trying to get as much light as possible. In the summer, it will compact itself and it will bring the leaves in a bit closer. This does that anyway. So that is quite cool about it. What else could I say about this? Yes, I think potentially if you really wanted to get a mature looking leaf on this plant, I think, and I'm pretty sure with this one, you would kind of really need to give it something like a moss pole or a plank or a wall to climb up on. It really does want to do that. I'm trying to think, the aerial roots on this are never spectacular. So there is that to bear in mind. Probably a moss pole might be better if you want to keep some of that moisture in there. But as long as you're tying it up and you're giving it something to kind of hold on to, it seems to be happy. As I said, I'm assuming if you want those bigger leaves, give it something to attach to and it will be happy. I'm okay with it as it is. So I've kind of left it as it is. Other than that, I don't think it needs any real specialist care, really. It's a relatively easygoing one. So I've put it down because pond for a while gets a bit heavy. Now, I'll do my usual kind of scoring on this. In terms of knowing what I know now, if I didn't have this plant, would I buy it? Probably. And there's reasons that are not related to this plant for the probably and not a definite yes. If I had a bit more space in my environment to actually put this on a moss pole and get those slightly larger leaves, it would be 100% yes, I would get this because, and again, feral plant, it's done really well without very much intervention from me, and it's kind of done its own thing. It hasn't had probably the best light. It had some mildew on it as well. It's had pests that I did treat when I saw, and it's still doing okay. So yeah, that I'll take some kind of some of that definiteness away because it was a bit slower to get going. But you know what? If I just had the space, and as I said, that's less of a reflection on the plant, and I keep pointing because it's down, less of a reflection on the plant and more of a reflection of me and my space. So if the space wasn't an issue and I wasn't as crammed as I am and I could give it what it needed, then yeah, 100%, I would definitely buy this plant. It's easy. And if you've been on my channel long enough, you know that I like plants that are not fussy. They might not always like me. Give me a prima donna of a plant and I will make it happy. Give me the easiest plants in the world and I will kill them off in a heartbeat. You do not want to know how many ZZ plants I have killed. The one plant that I really, really cannot grow. And I keep doing what everybody else keeps saying, and I water it no more than how often I might pay the mortgage or I might pay the rent. So it's either getting watered once every month or once every 2 months. It still hates my guts, basically. And I will always kill it to root rot. I think it is one of those plants that people can just leave there for months on end, forget about it. I'm not that But yeah, anyway, off topic again. Shocking. This is a very on tangent or off tangent video. I do apologize. But yeah, so I would say I would definitely get this if I had the space. At the moment, it's probably going to be yes for me. In terms of scoring from 0, 1 being the worst and 10 being the best, this might actually surprise you based on what I just said now. I would give this a 9. I would give this a 9. And the only reason why I'm taking a point off is because it doesn't hugely excite me in its current form. The bigger type, the kind of more mature form, and actually the fact that it's as easy as it is to grow, for me, will give it a great score. It's an easy houseplant. It will do its thing, you don't have to fuss it, and it will still give you something a bit more interesting to look at with those roughly kind of leaves. Yeah, for me, it's a solid 9, actually. I'm surprising myself as I'm saying this now. Because it's very much it's somewhere in the corner and it will be fine. But yeah, so an interesting one to maybe consider, because I don't think a lot of people talk about this enough. And yeah, before I wrap up, because I know a couple of people were worried on my previous videos when I was sitting down and it was lower about what's happening with the Esmeraldens, I thought I'd bring you back up again to a higher position that you're kind of used to. It's still fine. It's still huge. It's literally some of the lowest leaves, which, to be fair to that plant, have probably been there 2 or 3 years. And they were probably some of the first leaves that I got in my care, or maybe one of them was a leaf that it came with, and now basically giving up the ghost. And they're getting shaded by the gloriosum that is growing here. So you might be able to see some of the leaves are still there, and there's some below it. You probably can only see the maybe top of it there. Yeah. So it's getting shaded out, but it's all right. It's kind of growing at the top there. For the people that have been kind of asking for a while, yes, there has been a top cutting. It is taking a while to root out. What I might try, if I want to take another top cutting, because it's basically hitting the ceiling of the conservatory, is I might start doing the air layering method and see how that goes before I kind of do that, because I'm very aware that this plant probably will need to be chopped down a bit, and I know there's going to be a lot of people screaming no at their screen right now, but it just needs space. It's kind of hitting the ceiling. It doesn't really have anywhere else to go. It will be fine. It will bounce back. But I might end up getting a slightly bushier plant. You never know. I might even try getting this growing into my household. Shocking. And I don't think this had a particular issue growing in a household. But yeah, sorry, that's way off topic. But similar leaves, I guess that's where the similarities come. Anyway, sorry. This is going to be a fun video to edit, and I'm going to cringe whilst I'm editing it, I think, anyway. But yeah. I think that's everything I wanted to say today. Sorry for going off topic as much as I did. Hopefully you enjoyed. Hopefully I shall see you here soon. And I do promise for the newbies, not every video is like this, I think. But yeah, have a great rest of your day and hopefully I shall see you soon. Thanks. Bye.